September 22, 1827, after 4 years of preparation, Moroni gave the prophet Joseph the gold plates and told him to begin the work of translation. Emma Hale, whom Joseph had married earlier that year, accompanied him on that occasion and was waiting at the foot of the hill Cumorah when her husband returned with the plates. She became an important help to the prophet and acted as one of the Book of Mormon scribes for a brief period. Because of the repeated and strenuous efforts of a local mob to steal the gold plates, Joseph and Emma were forced to leave their home in Manchester, New York. They took refuge at the home of Emma's father, Isaac Hale, in Harmony, Pennsylvania, about 120 miles southeast of Manchester. There Joseph began translating the plates. He was soon joined by his friend, Martin Harris, a well-to-do farmer, who became his scribe. Martin asked Joseph if he could take 116 pages of translated material home to show his family members to prove to them the validity of the work they were doing. Joseph asked the Lord for permission, but the Lord's answer was no. Martin pleaded for Joseph to ask again, which Joseph reluctantly did 2 more times and finally received permission. Martin made a covenant to show the manuscript only to certain people, but he broke his promise, and the pages of manuscript were stolen. This loss caused Joseph inconsolable grief, for he thought that all his efforts to serve Thellard had been lost. He cried,
"What shall I do? I have sinned. It is I who tempted the wrath of God. I should have been satisfied with the first answer which I received from the Lord."
Joseph sincerely repented, and after a brief period when the plates and the Urim and Thummim were taken away, the Lord forgave him and he began translating once again. The Lord instructed him not to retranslate the lost material, which contained a secular history. Instead, Joseph was to translate other plates prepared by the prophet Nephi that covered the same period of time but contained greater prophecies of Christ and other sacred writings. The Lord had foreseen the loss of the 116 pages and inspired Nephi to prepare the second history. At this time, Joseph was blessed with the help of Oliver Cowdery, a young schoolteacher who was directed by the Lord to the prophet's home. Oliver commenced to write on 7 April 1809. Of that momentous time he said,
"These were days never to be forgotten. To sit under the sound of a voice dictated by the inspiration of heaven awaken the utmost gratitude of this bosom. That book is true. I wrote it myself as it fell from the lips of the prophet. It contains the everlasting gospel."
In the midst of their work, Joseph and Oliver found that their dedication to the translation of the record had left them without food or money. They lacked even the necessary writing materials. Learning of their plight, Joseph Knight Sr., a former employer and friend of the prophet, determined to give them assistance. He then visited the 2 men in Harmony. He described the nature of his most timely aid.
"I bought a barrel of mackerel and some lined paper for writing. I bought some 9 or 10 bushels of grain and 5 or 6 bushels taters. Joseph and Oliver were gone to see if they could find a place to work for provisions, but found none. They returned home and found me there with provisions, and they were glad, for they were out. Then they went to work and had provisions enough to last till the translation was done."
Because of increasing persecution, Joseph and Oliver left Harmony and completed the work of translation at the Peter Whitmer Farm in Fayette, New York, during June 1829. When the work of translation was complete, the prophet made arrangements with Egbert B. Grandin of Palmyra to print the Book of Mormon. Martin Harris entered into a mortgage agreement with Mr. Grandin to ensure payment of the $3,000 required to print 5,000 copies of the book. The first copies of the Book of Mormon were made available to the public at the E. B. Grandin Bookstore on March 26, 1830. The completion of this work in the midst of such trying circumstances is truly a modern-day miracle. With little formal education, Joseph Smith dictated the translation in just a little over 2 months of actual working time and made very few corrections. The book stands today essentially as he translated it and has been the source of testimony for millions of people throughout the world. Joseph Smith was a powerful instrument in the hands of the Lord in bringing forth the words of ancient prophets for the blessing of saints in the latter days.
The world is crumbling at our feet. The skies are filled with gray. The Savior's calling to his sheep, and he will lead the way. We know his voice, we've heard it before. We know the words he said.